Chuck Woolery is conservative, and he likes telling people about it. Now, if you don't know who Chuck Woolery is, he's a game show host. Works really, really hard. So he's going to go on TV, though, and yell at people who are making minimum wage. This ought to be classy. Let's watch.
You see, I think it's the liberals' job to take the simple and make it as complex as possible. I think it's the conservatives' job, and we don't do a very good job of it, to take the complex and make it as simple as possible. So we try to take these issues like the things that sound really good, you know, this knee-jerk reaction, $15 an hour. My son is 19, 20 years old. He would love to make $15 an hour. I'd love for him to make $15 an hour. But it literally just hurts business. You got to earn your way in this world, and if it costs them $15 an hour and you're a small business and it ruins the business, what good does it do? And people just don't think that through. They don't reason it through, and they have a knee-jerk reaction like, oh, $15 an hour, great.
Yeah, it sounds great.
And minimum wage is like, these are people who are starting off. They're not people who have families by and large.
Yeah, that's not true. That's because you don't know what you're talking about. Because you come at it from an enormously wealthy perspective. And come on, who are you kidding, man? Look, we don't know Chuck Woolery's salary, but I'm going to give you some salaries of talk show hosts or game show hosts in a second to give you some context. Your son isn't dying for a $15 an hour job. Your son is in an enormously wealthy family. So please don't patronize us. And, oh yeah, my son would love that. I don't know anything about your son, so I don't want to get more into your son. But I know when someone's being disingenuous. Again, I'll get to salaries in a second. Then secondly, these are just kids that are, you know, just getting up in the world that are getting minimum wage. Yeah, that's your old way of thinking from the 1950s. In this day and age, that's not the case at all. In fact, let me give you the facts here. The Center of Economic and Policy Research Analysis found in 2014 that the average age for a minimum wage worker had risen to 35 years old, and that 88% of employees who earn the minimum wage were older than 20 years of age. So this isn't the old days when it's like, oh, that's your first job and that's the only time you get minimum wage. No, they're 35 years old. They're grown men, because it is incredibly hard to get jobs in this economy. But you wouldn't know that because you're a freaking game show host. But he's going to go on here talking about nonsense. Here, watch this.
It's flipped on its head. In the 50s in Hollywood, if you spoke against for communism, you were blackballed. In the 90s and 2000s in Hollywood, if you speak for communism, you're rewarded for it. But if you speak against communism, you're blackballed.
For sure.
So everything's flipped upside down.
Nobody's praised for speaking. Who's speaking in favor of communism? What's he talking about? Is he talking about Bernie Sanders, who's a democratic socialist, like the kind of socialism you see in Northern Europe? They're not communists. Hey, what a preposterous thing to say. Like, oh yeah, in Hollywood, they're like, oh, you're a communist, fantastic. Let me give you more money and praise. No, this is the hyperbolic way of speaking from someone who's completely detached from reality. So what has Chuck Woolery done in his life? So let me show you the very important shows that he has hosted. Wheel of Fortune, Love Connection, The Big Spin, Scrabble, The Home and Family Show, The Dating Game, I love this one, Greed, Lingo, The Chuck Woolery Show, The Price is Right Live, and Save Us, Chuck Woolery. Man, he has worked hard. Now, again, we don't know Woolery's salary exactly, but to give you context, Pat Sajak, for example, who now has the Wheel of Fortune job, makes a reported $12 million a year. Judge Judy has another syndicated show on TV. You know how much she makes? $47 million a year. Now, he's not Judge Judy, and I'd be surprised if he even made as much as Pat Sajak. By the way, he thought he was a tough guy. The reason he lost the Wheel of Fortune job, he was the original host, is that he tried to negotiate for a higher salary, and they're like, yeah. He asked for too much. They actually bumped his salary up. I think it was from $65,000 to $500,000. He's like, no, I want $1 million. And this is a long time ago. This was decades ago, right? And they're like, yeah, you're fired. Well played. Nonetheless, he made a tremendous amount of money from doing the easiest job in the world. Do you know how much game show hosts work? And this is going to depress you. On average, they do about 8 weeks of work a year. That they tape all those shows at once. So they'll go in and they'll tape 5 shows, 10 shows, 20 shows, and they'll work 8 weeks, and then they're done. And then they go home and sit at home for the rest of the year, eating their money, their millions of dollars. Then they go on Fox News and yell at the people making minimum wage. Oh, you want a higher minimum wage. You want all the way up to $15 an hour. That's so unrealistic. Oh, Mr. Game Show host, tell us what else is realistic. God, man. Just have the decency to shut the fuck up and stay home. Young Turks.